Great. Well, Gareth, this is a huge welcome. And I know that we've sort of got to know each other over the last 6 months through the global research program we're doing initially. And then, of course, as a guest on our great event that we ran at the London Stock Exchange just before Christmas. And I've found every conversation with you really fascinating and interesting to get the sort of perspective of someone with a marketing background in this world in which we operate more sales focused. So it's a huge welcome to the Sales Transformation Podcast, and thank you for joining us. Well, that's great. So, Gareth, what we normally do before we get started in the sort of theme and the topic is, I wonder if you could just give a short introduction as to who you are and what your sort of career progression has been since you've sort of entered the commercial world.
Sure, of course. So thanks very much for having me on. So I'm Gareth Abel. I am a seasoned and experienced international chief marketing officer, and I specialize in delivering sustainable profit growth. My experience has predominantly been in technology businesses, and for me, that means telecoms, consumer electronics, and digital services. And I've been very fortunate to do that literally all over the world. I started my career in telecoms working for Orange when the business was just 4 years old, and I spent a good chunk of time with that business. I then moved overseas, working for businesses like Apprenticeships in the Middle East and also Ooredoo in Oman. I came back to the UK and had stints with Samsung and with Dixon's Carphone. And then I've also been back on my travel since. I've worked for a mobile network operator in Brazil, and then also digital services businesses in Japan and in Mexico City.
Some amazing sort of international sort of background you've got. And and as you were sort of describing the various countries in which you've operated in, how would you describe the differences in the sort of challenges that you faced across different parts of the globe?
So I think the thing I'd say is that I'd always wanted the opportunity to work internationally. So it was something I've always kind of leaned into. So I looked for opportunities in order to do that. And basically what I found was that once I'd worked in more than one country, or I'd operated across more than one country, one of the interesting things as a marketer is you try and be very market oriented, and you try and understand, what are the similarities or the differences between different customer types? What do they need? How do they behave? How do you reach them? How do you influence them, etc.? And as a result of that, once you've done it more than once, actually it becomes quicker and quicker and quicker in order to be able to tune in and to work out, what's required in different markets. Where I'd say there's a challenge is more on the business side, and that's to do with the when you look at the different approaches that perhaps businesses in different regions tend to take. It would be very simple to say, businesses in Western Europe are far more advanced than businesses in other parts of the world, but that's not necessarily true. What I've found is that in some parts of the world, so thinking about my experiences in Latin and South America, these businesses operate with very high levels of professionalism, super quick decision making, and are very focused on going after what they need. And they don't mess about with kind of supplementary things that are there for sort of vanity reasons. So they can be particularly well focused. So looking out into the market, it's relatively straightforward to understand the differences. And the challenging part of the career is navigating the different setups and the different businesses in different countries.
Yeah. Yeah. So interesting. I know that we, talking about the sort of Latin Americas, I know that we had a student who was on one of our early master's programs with Sony Mobile when we worked with Sony. Mm-hmm. And he had a particular challenge with the regulators in Colombia about the ability to sell smartphones. And because he was working with Sony, that had a huge impact on his market. But what was really interesting is rather than take the legislation as a fait accompli, he actually challenged the legislators or the telecoms authorities in Colombia, and managed to convince them that actually not enabling the population to buy smartphones would be detrimental, in fact, to the economic development in the country. And he managed to get them to change their decision. And because he was working, he's obviously working for Sony. Sony was working on the basis that the regulations would allow, particularly in the Christmas push. So this is a bit of a tangent to our conversation, but Sony had sort of got stocks ready for the Christmas push, which is when most of the mobile phones were being sold. And, they went from the very low market share in Colombia to, like 2% market share in Colombia, up to 7 or 8% in one quarter. And it was down to the sort of, I don't know, I'm just speaking to your point about the directness, the directness of that particular part of the world and the ability to make quick decisions. I think that sort of confirms my experience, certainly through this one student. But I'll never forget his story. Actually, it was just amazing.
That's very impressive, and kudos to your master's student for persevering and making that happen.
Well,
I would say that in that part of the world, there is the opportunity that when everybody is looking to grow and to develop, there is the opportunity, there is the culture to be able to push on a different door and to see how you can make something happen. I've not heard of an example with a regulator like that. Previously. But as I say, kudos to your student for persevering.
Yes, we refer to this as tactful audacity, and he certainly had bucket loads of that. So he featured. I don't think he came on the podcast. Actually, we should invite him to. But anyway, I think we're here. In fact, this is going to be the first of a trilogy of podcasts we're going to do on the topic of marketing. And I think it's the first time we've invited a CMO to come and take part. So thank you for joining us. And from my experience, there's always been a sort of, I wouldn't say sort of tension. I wouldn't say that, but a sort of silo almost between sales and marketing, and sort of seeing some of the challenges that sales face, particularly through the ability of marketing to generate, sales qualified leads and so on. And so so I think this is a great opportunity, I think, through the podcast and through interviewing you. And I know that it's going to be a great discussion we're going to have to kind of understand how marketeers, particularly how you think and how you look at the world, the commercial world in which we're operating in. And I know that when we prepared for this podcast, there were a number of themes that we thought we could explore. And the first one is, attitudes towards revenue versus attitudes towards profit. And I wonder if you could just talk us through some of the philosophies that you have that underpin how you think as a marketeer.
Sure. So I suppose the key thing here is that actually it's the generation of profit which is the actual number one objective for a commercial business. And then generating revenue without profit isn't delivering a return on the capital that's been invested in the business. And therefore, it's not attractive to shareholders or investors. So my focus as a marketer is to deliver sustainable profit growth. And that means it's really all about improving a business's profitability consistently and sustainably over time. My goal here is to ensure that you can generate regular returns to shareholders and also making the business more valuable, increasing enterprise value. So I do this by helping businesses to identify the profit opportunity in their sector and then deliver the
Yeah.
capability that enables them to harvest the profit opportunity consistently over time. A focus on revenue is often a focus on volume. It's not a focus on value.
Right. Is that, from your experience of working with the various organizations that you have done, is that born out of um, a focus on revenue that you think is not correct, or sort of where does this focus on sustainable profit sort of come from? I suppose. I mean, it's an
Well,
obvious thing to me, but
yeah, so I think having worked in, certainly for the last 10 years or so, I've done a lot of work in investor-backed businesses. And when you look at, what a private equity fund is doing, for example, their
yeah,
goal is they buy it here, they look to sell it after a number of years of working their value creation magic and then exiting here.
right,
And a great
right,
way to deliver, probably the most effective way to deliver a higher value outcome, is to ensure that there has been a significant improvement in the profit that's generated, but not just as a one-off, as a result of cutting cost in a particular way. You have to be able to work in a way that enables you to be a better business that can generate more profit as a result. So that's really the
right.
background as to why.
Okay. So you've explained, the focus on profit growth, which is, I think it's kind of it's a no-brainer to me. So I'm slightly surprised that by looking, by looking at the question, it's kind of inferring that some organizations really just focus on revenue and not on profit. But you've obviously seen companies sometimes look at the top line, but not spending enough attention looking at at the bottom line.
Yeah, so I don't want
And
to I don't want to dig too much into a sales and marketing divide. However,
no,
one of the seeds I will sow is that, particularly from a sales perspective, it is much more like the sales organizations are much more likely to be focused on volume, which equals revenue, as
oh
opposed to
yeah,
volume, which equals
absolutely,
profitability.
yeah. I mean, you can see that quite often in some of the ways that incentive, sort of schemes are organized for salespeople. So the bonuses are based on revenue, not on profit. So
Correct. Yeah.
it's going to drive a certain behavior, just like you say. I mean, the other point that confirms, I think, that sales teams focus too much on revenue is that we found that they don't understand what are the implications of simple things like the effects of discounting on profitability and how much more you need to sell in order to make the same profit as you might have done before. And I know that we do this sometimes with a certain degree of sort of a light-hearted comment, but we ask the simple question: if you are operating in a market where you are generating 25% gross profit margin, and you are asked by a customer to give a 5% discount in order to secure a contract, how much more would you need to sell in order to make the same gross
Mhm.
profit as you did before? And it's quite astonishing how many sellers actually get it wrong. They don't realize how much more that they need to sell in order to make the same gross profit. So I completely agree with you in that, this focus on profit is something that is really important for salespeople to understand, as well
Mhm.
as, of course, marketing. So, um,
Got one
so what
little
sort of major
additional point
insights?
there.
Oh, sorry, Gareth.
Sorry.
Yeah,
Yeah, one additional point to mention there. So you've highlighted about the problem with discounting. Actually, the
yeah,
real profit opportunity is price. So it is the lead. There are four levers that you can pull in order to improve
yeah,
profit. You can increase revenue, increase price, reduce fixed or variable costs. And it's been well proven.
Yeah.
So there's a beautiful study by the Harvard Business Review that shows how much more effective increasing your price is when you're looking to
Yeah.
increase your level of profitability. So actually,
Yeah.
what you really want to be able to do is that you want to build a business that has pricing power, which is the ability to raise your prices without seeing a corresponding drop off in volume. That's the real holy grail in terms of being able to drive profitability for a business, as well as keeping everything else under control. So in addition to stopping discounting, you actually want to be able to charge higher prices and make your customers very happy to pay them.
Right. How do you do that?
So there's a number of different things that you need to do. So firstly, you need to make sure that the product that you are delivering, its performance needs to be, fantastic and unquestionable.
Yeah.
Then the experience of using the product and interacting with your business also needs to be flawless. In addition to that, you need to build a distinctive and differentiated brand position in the mind of your target customer, so that they recognize you as standing apart from the rest of the competitors in your sector. So the combination of those three things, plus sustaining it over time, are the best ingredients for enabling a business to achieve pricing power. And that's exactly what Warren Buffett is looking for, the world's greatest investor, when he's looking to invest in a business.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting that one of the other perhaps levers, and you may have touched upon it, for improving margin is by changing the mix of services that you sell. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So if one is looking for overall improvement at an organizational level, yes, you can increase prices or you can decrease costs and fixed costs, but you can also change the mix of services that you sell, where certain services may have higher profit than others. Yeah. So the mix of business is really important. And I'm sure that also forms part of how sort of marketing would operate in terms of looking at, given you've got multiple product and services that you can sell, what combination of product and services would also help us maximize, the profit. Is that something you would concur with?
So I would, but I would also take you further upstream first. So I built a playbook on delivering sustainable profit growth, and the first stage of 4 is the diagnosis stage, and in that, you need to work out where you are in the market. What does the world look like? And so what I do here is I create a segment map of the market, and so you can see where are there different groups of customers that have common needs. And then what you're doing, or what I'm doing when I'm focusing on, delivering sustainable profit growth, is that I am then able to identify where are the profitable opportunities within that market. Because if you look at, any given category, there will be areas where you can make more money than others. There will be customer groups who have higher usage, greater elasticity or inelasticity to price. And so by identifying where the profitable opportunities are from a customer perspective before you get into product, then you have the ability to say, okay, now let us work out what these profitable customers want, how we need to appeal to them, what are the right mix of value propositions, what are the right experiences that they need. So what I'm talking about is perhaps the other side of the coin, which perhaps needs to come first before you think about the mix that you actually go to market with. It's where you identify what you are intentionally looking to be.
Yeah. No, I think that makes total sense. So, on the topic of sustainable profit growth, what sort of insights would you like to share on that, particular topic? Maybe you've covered some of these insights already, but
Yeah. So I think the first key point I want to share is that it's really important that everybody recognizes that businesses that are well known, and these are sometimes referred to as having sort of, brand equity or awareness,
yeah,
consideration, or indeed there's a concept called mental availability, but you know, they're all referring to, are these known for something positive? So
yeah,
businesses that are known by the person or persons that are making the buying decision are more likely
yeah,
to be bought. So,
yeah,
and that's a really powerful insight in terms of how humans make decisions. Our brains are
yeah,
bombarded by thousands and thousands of messages every day, and there are so many micro decisions that everybody needs to make. So we are
yeah,
always, as humans, our brains are there to find a short way to find a way to short circuit, to shortcut the
yeah,
decision making process. So bringing this into commercial terms, regardless of what the sales process is, whether it's an impulse purchase when you're in the
yeah,
supermarket, or if it's a complex RFI, RFP process, people that are
yeah,
making decisions to buy are always, always more likely to make a purchase from a business they already know something positive about.
right,
So the implications of that is that any business looking to make a profit, and as we've just said,
yeah,
selling at a discount is negative, and it's something you need to do less when you are well known.
yeah,
So anybody that's looking to
yeah,
make a profit must build and nurture its brand and its reputation so that they come to mind.
yeah. It's a really it's a really interesting topic, and and sort of speaking from my experience, of Consalia, and of course looking at where we want to take the sort of business moving forward. We're a relatively small company operating in quite a niche area, um, with predominantly some pretty strong brands in our field, and so it's been an interesting journey the last sort of 10 years, to answer the question, how do we build that sort of brand awareness and that sort of brand equity, and it takes a long time, but I think I mean, again, this is interesting to see what you feel, but it before you can build brand equity, you really need to know what your purpose is. As a business, you need to know, you know, what your vision is. But I think it get, the better quality, the development of brand equity is the strength of passion that you might have about where you see your particular business being in the future.
Mm.
And so it's taken us a long time to recognize what that vision was, and it's changed over years slightly. But once it's changed, it gave us the call to action. But then it was, how do you build brand awareness once you have defined where it is you want to go?
I
I'll
think
stop and pause and let you reflect on that a bit. But
Yeah, I think that the shortcut piece of advice I would give you, which is about making sure that you can do this a bit more quickly and to make sure that it's really on point, is just thinking about what I
right,
mentioned in terms of building a segment map. So
yeah,
the segment map isn't just about identifying where the profit opportunities are. In addition, you
yeah,
also need to be able to understand, what do the different segments want? And
yeah,
sometimes we refer to these as the category entry points, the reasons for
right,
why somebody comes into the market in order to buy a particular product or service.
Yeah.
And so what you want to be able to do is to identify which are the target segments that I'm going to go
Yeah.
after. What do they want? And then those things that they want, those category entry points, you then need to become known for them. So then everything
Yeah.
that you do is in service of
Yeah.
landing. Basically
Yeah.
what we do is we build a positioning for what the business stands
Yes.
for. And you want to land it in the mind of the profitable target segment. So by
Yeah.
being able to identify what they want and then turning that into a positioning, you then become so much more accurate. You're not guessing
Yeah.
in terms of what they want. You're actually making sure that you are appealing directly to their needs, which is 200x more effective than
Yeah.
than simply running activity. It still does take time.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that this is overnight. It takes
Yeah.
time. It takes resources, human and financial, in order to do
Yeah.
it. But what you're looking to do here is you're looking to make sure that you are consistently executing around this positioning and then allowing it to
Yeah.
compound over time. And you should be measuring it by the amount of
Yeah.
people who are coming to you organically, because that's what you want.
Yeah.
You want people to organically, intentionally choose you. And so that's a pull
Sure.
mechanism as opposed to a push.
Yeah. I know we had sort of quite a celebration when we closed a particularly big opportunity a couple of years ago from someone that we had no previous contact with, that had done their research and and they clearly in doing of the research realized that the extensiveness of our services in this particular area and the ecosystem we had built around it was exactly what they were looking for. And so it was a big moment, to and normally when you are and it was a competitive bid as well. And normally when you're competing for these major bids, the chances of winning them are quite small. If you don't have a personal connection with the company who's put the bid, they may have an incumbent provider. And so it was just very interesting. So yeah, completely cool. We decided to compete because of the way they approached us, and we had a very happy result. And so that kudos to our marketing team, for having all of the hard work that we've been doing over the years. And this was a big moment for us, and where we realized the importance of marketing in sort of creating that
Congratulations.
sort of
You've
brand
shown
work.
what's effective.
Well, it is, but I do know it takes a lot of courage to persevere when you're not seeing immediate results. Because essentially we're starting from really ground zero. And building up a brand from sort of not being known to getting known enough for companies to notice us, and sort of and that I find as someone who's got limited funds to spend on marketing, not knowing, what's working, what isn't across all the different activities of marketing. I think it takes a lot of courage to sometimes
Yeah.
persevere when it's
So
taking so long.
I agree that it does. But I want to share a quote and one additional point. So
Yeah.
the quote is, and please forgive me, listeners, if you heard this 100 times, but there's the question, when should you plant a tree? So the answer is 20 years ago. That's the best time to have planted a tree.
Yeah. Yeah.
But actually,
Yeah.
what's the next best time to plant it? Well, it's today. And so
Yeah.
what you're looking to do is you're looking to build that reputation, that capability,
Yeah.
the magnet that attracts people to you organically and with intention.
Yeah.
If you do that, they are easier
Yeah.
to convert and they will pay more money. So
Yeah.
any business that wants to be more profitable needs to adopt a methodology that does this. This is well proven. That's how it works. But
Yeah.
I
Yes.
genuinely recognize the courage that is required when you don't have unlimited resources. And so the critical
Yes.
component then is about the approach that you take. So then you need to
Yeah.
be really honed in on, what are the key things that we want to do? What can we
Yes.
own? What is difficult for our competitors to do? And then let us
Yeah.
focus on that consistently. So it's not something you
Yeah.
can do, this year and not yet and not next. It's something you need to
Yeah.
plant and then nurture consistently
Right.
over time.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So I'm just going over some of the questions we prepared, Gareth, and you've certainly given a lot of insights around the importance of understanding your sort of market segments, really understanding, being sort of focused on analyzing what it is your key market is looking for, the customer perspective, and sort of working back from that. Are there any more insights that you'd like to share on that particular, topic, before I move into questions around sort of, how do you balance the commercial, efforts of the organization to achieve, the sustainable profit goals?
So there's a good segue here. So there's a final insight
Right.
to really share. And this is that typically 95% of your potential target customers aren't in the market right now. Only 5% of them are. So this is called the 95-5 rule. So you need to
Right.
really be thinking about how do you organize to make sure
Yeah.
that you lean in intentionally to this. And so this is how
Yeah.
a business should really be thinking about how it balances its commercial efforts. And when I say
Yeah.
commercial, actually I mean the combination of your sales and marketing resources, your people, your tools, your
Yeah.
finances in order to do that. So this concept
Yeah.
of understanding who's in market right now and who is going to be in the market in the future is a really critical thing for a commercial organization to get its head around. Because when I look
Yeah.
at the commercial organization, actually, they've got two main jobs, bearing this in mind. So the first one is about ensuring the creation of future demand. And that's what you do
Right.
by building this brand equity or mental availability
Yeah.
with the target audience you're going after. That's the 95. You want to make
Yeah.
sure
Yeah.
that your business is already on the customer's mental shortlist for when they come
Yeah.
into the market to buy.
Yeah.
Secondly, and equally as important, is then
Yeah.
right now converting demand from the 5 who are in market today. So you need to make
Right.
sure that this understanding of some people are in the market, but the vast majority will not. So I need to
Just
ensure
not.
that I've landed mental availability of my business with that target audience. So when they are so much easier to convert.
Yeah, 100%. Sort of agree with that, and I think even once when you've got sort of regular customers that you deal with, they go through their own sort of buying cycles, and yeah, they may not be in the market for 3 or 4 years, but you can't not keep present, and I know there's been a lot of focus around things like account-based marketing and so on, which you may want to talk about, but it's sometimes it's sometimes difficult when you looking at this from a sales angle to if you're looking after quite a lot of customers. Some salespeople have 60 clients that they're sort of looking after. Some of these may have been very large clients in the past, but they're not buying at the moment. So how do you keep your brand in front of all of these customers such that, like you say, you are in front of mind when they are ready, to buy?
Mhm.
And that in itself takes quite a lot of understanding who the key stakeholders are, in those key accounts, and having I guess, a sustainable kind of program that may not be sales led, it could be marketing led, to keep your brand in front of the stakeholders so that, they'll remember you.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree with that. Look, the key way I think about this, and it's a very, very sort of simple reframe in terms of
Yeah.
this concept of sales and marketing. So actually,
Yeah.
my recommendation is that we reverse it to marketing and
Yes.
sales.
Marketing and
Not
sales.
sales
Yeah.
and marketing, but marketing and sales.
It's
And
it's logical, isn't it? Because it needs to start with marketing and finish with sales.
yeah, look, I can be pretty brutal and say in many situations, if you are using your salespeople to keep your business and your brand in the mind of your target customer and they're not buying, it's a very expensive and therefore and often ineffective way in order to
Yeah.
do this. So there are lots of different channels that you can use in order to make this work. And actually, businesses that have the types of relationships where account-based marketing is well used, they can be very effective operating like that. But
Yeah.
we really should think about, okay, we've got these two jobs to do. So, the creation of that mental imprint so that you are always top of mind for when you come into
Yeah.
the market. That is based on traditional definition, that would be a marketing role in
Yeah.
order to do so. And you've got to make sure that you are seeding those hooks into the mind of the customer so that when they
Yeah.
are coming into the market, that actually you're equally
Yeah.
well organized conversion engine, which could be
Yeah.
your direct sales force, it could be your distribution channels, it could be e-commerce, the use of performance marketing in order to do that. They need to be partnering together so that the hooks that are there can be
Yeah.
there to you can immediately convert, you can pull the fish out of the water and turn it into profitable revenue. So
Yeah.
really, sales and marketing should be called marketing and sales.
Marketing and sales. So so that maybe addresses the, how should you organize yourselves as the company, to sort of implement this. Step number one is talk about marketing and sales, not sales and marketing.
Yeah.
So
So it's really
we need to
about
get the mindset in the
understanding the
right.
95/5 rule. So it's really about
Yeah.
understanding
Yeah.
we know that we need to be known. And we know that
Yeah.
95% of the market isn't in the market. 95% of the
Yeah.
profitable audience isn't in market right now.
Yeah.
So we need to
Yeah.
appeal to them and make sure that we are on their
Yeah.
mental shortlist. And then when they do come
Yeah.
in, then we need to make sure
Yeah.
that we are ready to convert all of that good effort we put
Yes.
in upstream.
Yes. Okay. So is there any advice that you would like to give organizations on how to sort of implement the approach that you've been talking about?
So I think the first thing is that you've really got to do your due diligence
Yeah.
as a leader in terms of what really works. So when people ask me for for recommendations for books and so on, I always recommend first of all you should read Mindset by Carol Dweck. So this concept of continually being open to learn. Businesses are
Yeah.
very busy places, and the number
Yeah.
of people that don't take
Yeah.
time to do more than what it takes in order to survive their working day,
Yeah.
is a challenge for organizations not getting better.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
the principles that we've been talking about today are now well proven and are some of
Yes.
the principles of commercial science. So it's important that organizations are really thinking about, what does it actually take in order to be properly
Yeah.
successful? And if you've read Mindset and you've decided, yeah, actually, I am prepared to take on board, external thought and advice, which perhaps isn't
Yeah.
something I've done in my very narrow track over the last 10,
Yeah.
20 years of my career, then you have
Yeah.
the opportunity to say, okay, so maybe that is a different,
Yeah.
better, and what we've been discussing is a proven approach in order to
Yeah.
make this happen. So that's what I would do first. And then I would be looking at, so what are the simple principles that we should be looking to implement? So,
Right.
you should be doing it, you should be looking at doing a diagnosis, really thinking about,
Yeah.
okay, are we crystal clear about the whole market landscape? Are we crystal clear about what do different types of customers actually want? And are we crystal clear on the different profit opportunities for them in terms of, what we can earn and indeed what it will cost in order to do that? Bringing that to life is a
Yeah.
really powerful exercise for any business. And actually, if you find your commercial leadership working effectively with your finance and potentially your, in some organizations, your technical product leadership in order to really understand this, then you can really unlock a better
Right.
way of working that's going to be more sustainably successful over time.
Is it your experience that organizations don't do enough of that kind of analysis?
So my experience is that it's often unusual for businesses to do this. They find it very, very challenging to step back and to properly criticize themselves. And it
Right.
often takes a very significant change. So, a business coming off the rails, or maybe
Yeah.
a new leader that's brought in for a particular reason, change of
Yeah.
investment or something like that, which forces something to be reconsidered. And then you have the what does it take in order to
Right.
bring businesses along. It's why
Yeah.
I'm a real advocate of continuous professional training. So whether that's
Yeah.
from a sales perspective with organizations like yourself, or as a marketer,
Yeah.
or in other business functions, I think it's absolutely gold if your key team members are continuing to develop and are able
Yeah.
to bring an external perspective, because there is very little time within an
Yeah.
organization that's usually operating under pressure and at pace to take a moment to do that.
Yeah. That's interesting. So there's a lot of comment on efficiency in the business media. What's your take on that commentary, Gareth?
So efficiency or executing without waste is always going to be important. I'd never recommend,
Yeah.
deliberately trying to be inefficient. However, when looking specifically at commercial activity, I would really advocate
Yeah.
being focused on effectiveness first. You must ensure
Right.
what you're doing actually delivers the end impact you're looking for, and
Yeah.
then you can find ways to squeeze out efficiency from it.
Yeah.
If you focus
Yeah.
on efficiency only, you will only allocate your resources on the short-term KPIs that deliver efficiency, not the
Right.
effective outcomes that you really want. And so you tend to over-reliance on this, particularly in commercial organizations. They tend to farm in low quality, low value, high turnover segments of the market, where it's really difficult to reach a point where
Right.
there is sustainable value. And this is one of those
Yeah.
things where you've got to lean in to
Right.
to the reality that is out there, which actually working for the long term, building what we've been talking about, that mental availability, making sure you come
Yeah.
to mind around the key things that customers actually want, that you can deliver, and that your competition finds difficult, is absolutely critical. So efficiency is important for sure, but in the commercial world, it's effectiveness first and then efficiency.
Yeah. Do you have a point of view on the role that artificial intelligence is having now in the sort of domain of tools that might be available in the marketplace?
So there's such a broad spectrum for where you
Yeah.
can use AI within your business. Where I've seen it used in the most effective way, there are so many different use cases, but it's when there's a combination of where it can give you structure or understanding more quickly than a traditional approach. So, for example, some of the use of AI for market research using synthetic data, that can be really,
Yeah.
really effective. You can get, 95% the same outcome at a fraction of a cost, in a fraction of the time, which can be really, really
Yeah.
powerful. And also in terms of the way that you can go around creating structure in terms of the way that you might go about executing something can be super, super powerful. I think
Yeah.
the critical part with AI is that as an organization, you've got to recognize that it can touch so many different parts of the business. You need to think
Yeah.
about where are the right places to start to pilot, trial, and adopt technology in different ways, and then what your rules and governance are around it. Yesterday, I went to an event actually, and they had a speaker from a business in the wellness industry, and they seem to have a very sophisticated approach where they had created a centralized team that was being effectively funded to deliver AI capability across their entire organization. But I've seen businesses that are throwing, 20, 30, 40% of their resources at this. And so they're focusing purely on the gold rush and the glitter about it. What this business yesterday was doing was taking a very practical approach and saying, okay, we recognize that this technology is transformational. We understand that it'll add value in different areas of our business at different times and in different ways. So we are committing to it. We are creating the capability to be deployed across the organization. We are sponsoring it at the leadership level, and we are supporting it with resources, but it's not the only thing that we are doing. And so they were very transparent about where it's working really well for them and the areas where it's not, and areas that they will stop, and then they will start focusing in other areas.
Yeah, we had a very, very interesting at the event. As you know, we had Professor Julian Birkinshaw talking about AI, and I'm not sure if you were there when he was talking, but and it was very interesting to hear him share something similar, perhaps to how the wellness company you just mentioned are approaching AI. The moment the organizational benefits of AI have not been certainly academically assessed and qualified. There are not too many use cases now where it's has had a huge impact and a measurable impact on ROI, but at a personal productivity level, they're massive areas, like you've also mentioned, where AI tools can help improve productivity. But I think everyone knows that there will be use cases of significant value through various initiatives that are probably now sort of being worked on. But for sure, in the sales and marketing area, I think we're seeing a lot of very positive uses of AI to sort of manage the end-to-end sales process, whether it's from sort of marketing-led initiatives or sales-led initiatives. I'm quite excited about the potential for the future in that area.
Okay.
So yes, it can certainly help on efficiency. How effective? I think maybe a bit more time is required. But coming back to your stressing the differences between those two words of earlier on. Great. Well, I don't know if there's anything you would like, towards sort of finishing the podcast, Gareth. What are the key takeaways, do you think, that you would like to leave our listeners with when it comes to looking at this whole topic of marketing and sales, given most of the listeners to the podcast channel are going to have a sales orientation.
So I think the most important thing I can leave the listeners with is that actually any ambitious and highly effective sales leader should be absolutely demanding that their business is taking care of the 95% of people who are not in the market today. Because the way for a sales leader to be so much more successful is to ensure that their business, their brand, their value proposition is top of mind with the target audience when it comes. So they should be demanding that there is suitable investment in building brand equity and in the understanding of what it takes in order to understand the market, land what they want, land the key benefits, the key things that they're looking for in the mind of that target audience, and then they are able to connect with it in order to convert customers as and when they come into the market. So that, I would say, that is the most critical thing.
I think that's brilliant comment you've made, actually, on that point, because I just know most sales leaders are not focused on the 95. They're focused on the 5. You know, they don't think about the 95 as you've just described it. But I think that's a great takeaway.
You shouldn't start from zero every day, week, or month as a salesperson. You want to start from actually, all of these people are already considering me, my business, my brand, my value proposition. And actually, it just makes it so much easier. And it's not just easier to convert. It means you are so much more profitable in order to do it. So let's reframe this as marketing and sales, and let's have the salespeople really leaning into understanding the importance of being known, addressing the 95, and then converting as they come into market.
Yes. Well, I'm sure our head of marketing will completely agree with you and with your comments as well, because I know that when Eddie joined us, he took us on this particular journey because we're quite new to marketing, you know, a number of years ago, and you know, it was very much, I think, sharing some of the thoughts that you've shared, but as the CEO of the company, you're always wrestling with budgets and you're always wrestling with, you know, the business requirements, and that word courage, you know, it does take patience, and it takes a clear vision, I would say, about what you're trying to do, and a belief that it's the right investment to be making in these sort of marketing-led initiatives, which may not produce immediate
by following the right approach. That's the critical thing for you and for other businesses that are perhaps apprehensive and are only dealing in the 5, not the 95. Is to really think about, so what's the approach I should take? So this was the point around building the segment map, identifying where you want to go, building that very tight positioning, and then committing it with some really clear KPIs, which is around, you know, people choosing you organically. That's what you're looking to drive.
Yeah. Brilliant. Well, Gareth, thanks so much for joining us on this podcast as being the first of the trilogy. It's been fantastic. I've always enjoyed the conversations we had, and I know that you've mentioned some of these points before, but the repetition of these points actually is really helpful, and it's I'm sure that our listeners are going to find it really interesting as well. So thank you, Gareth, for taking part.
My pleasure. Thanks so much for having me on.